So the question is, Gary Anthony Ramsay, how do you approach creating or programming, making program content that is considered a commodity that relies on commercial success? How do you go about it at Arise to make people want to buy your product?
It is a struggle of the ages, as you might imagine. I mean, as you talked about Walter Cronkite. I mean,
And by the way, we used to do the same thing. Last time we saw each other was at Jason Blair,
yes,
New York Times.
we were street reporters.
And then we walked over to the Martha Stewart headquarters because the stories were happening at the same time, and we have not seen each other.
We've seen each other.
We haven't had a
like
conversation
long
since. It's been a long. We're old. Sorry.
So 50 years ago, to watch 50 million people sat down to watch Walter Cronkite at 6 o'clock or at 6:30. Now, if all of the networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox, if they collectively get 17 million, that's a good night. Where do those people go? They've gone to the phones, and we worried about the digital divide 10 years ago. Remember that conversation, that it would be a society of those who have the information versus those who don't. Well, the cell phone and the cheapness of technology now, at least in terms of getting it out there, has somewhat leveled the playing field. So you have a lot of people who are out there who are looking for information, they're looking for, or stuff, maybe not always information or news, but they're looking for stuff that interests them, and it is really, really hard to beat a tweet, to get on a breaking story.
Yeah.
Almost impossible to do. So what you want to focus on, or what we focus on, is if we can't be first, given the speed of the technology that exists, and if we're up against the resources of a behemoth like CNN, we're in their Death Star, by the way, then you have to focus on what it is that people, what perspective of a particular story do you want to cover? And we have this discussion almost every day at Arise. It's like, what makes this an Arise story? What makes this a story for communities that are underserved? As he says, the voice of the voiceless are communities that have traditionally been ignored by mainstream media. And I think that is what we do. That's our focus. Our focus is to, whether it is Ferguson, the kidnapped Nigerian schoolgirls. We were on that story from day one. And we actually had a ticker where we counted every day before that became a main story. When did it become a main story internationally? When a white celebrity held up a hashtag that said, "Bring back our girls." At that point, the girls had been missing 34 days. So we focus on a story like that worldwide, and we want to look at it in a different way. We want to try to look at it in a way that our viewers, or people we hope to serve, would be interested in. We don't have helicopters, we don't have satellites. What we do have is perspective and analysis, and that's how we try to win the content war, at least try to satisfy the audience that we would serve.
You said you can't beat a tweet, right, on breaking news. You do breaking news, but it's different because it's a newspaper. By the way, I just interviewed Ben Solomon.
Oh, yeah.
The video was amazing. Ben Solomon is a videographer who works for the New York Times, and he's in Liberia now, and he's covering Ebola. And it was fascinating because I think there's 1.5 million people. In a city of 1.5 million people, they have 15 ambulances, and to deal with Ebola. And he gets calls, like, it's amazing. So if you haven't seen the video, you should go on and look up Ben Solomon. It's amazing. It's amazing storytelling.